I find it maybe ironic or delicious irony that I help leaders become much better leaders than I ever was. And I can reflect on my lack of leadership at times or mistakes in leadership and help them do better.
Today is episode 29, season 2. Boom! Why did you whisper that boom?
It felt more suspenseful. Season 2. We're coming in with a whisper. We're going to end it with a roar. Get ready for it. Because we have a surprise.
We have a
we've been promoting it, so it's not like a total surprise. But it's a first. It's a first on Story Success and stuff.
His personality is not a surprise. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special guest. Not physically in the room, but virtually in the room today. Ladies and gentlemen, please meet Ken Jacobs. Woo! I wish we had more of an audience, Ken. I'm sorry that we don't.
That always happen. When people say my name, that's the reaction I'd like. How do I get that?
We're going to get John Goldberg from Counselors Academy to follow you around with a soundboard, and he will press the button that has all of the applause and a couple of Jewish jokes if you'd like.
I'm going to say, if we're looking for someone to follow me in the effort of getting me applause, John Goldberg is not. He's not. He'd be like, boo.
No.
Raspberries.
I can't. Now I cannot.
I have to think who would do applause. Ben Finzel.
Ben Finzel would be
he's great.
Our Counselors Academy co-chair. Amazing individual from the PRSA Counselors Academy Spring Conference. Ken, I will introduce Ken really quick, and I'll toss it to you, Jace.
Oh, I was just going to ask, at what level of fame or expertise do you get theme music? Because I don't necessarily need applause, but when I walk in, I would like there to be theme music.
That's a good.
That's as a speaker. When does that happen?
The song about Ken, I'm Knuff.
Yes.
Yes.
Which just won an Emmy.
I should have worn not Emmy, because it's Emmys are TV.
Original song. Anyways,
that wouldn't be an Emmy.
They won a Golden Globe for one song.
There you go.
And a
Critics' Choice. That's correct.
And I have a Knuff T-shirt that I should have worn.
Yeah. Okay, alongside your Knuff-ness T-shirt. Ken Jacobs is the principal of Jacobs Consulting and Executive Coaching, which helps empower public relations and communications leaders and executives to become more effective leaders. It does so via executive coaching. His company also helps agencies grow business, manage profitability, improve client service, and enhance team performance, communication, leadership skills through training and consulting. Prior to launching this company that he's currently in this capacity, Ken spent 25 years in management and leadership positions with a number of public relations agencies, which does include Ogilvy and Mather Public Relations, old school, incredible organization, Marina Marr Communications, Maloney and Fox, and Lippy Taylor. Ken discusses leadership with some of public relations and communications industry's most respected leaders through his leadership column in PRSA Strategies and Tactics, and that column is called Taking the Lead, similarly named to the video podcast on his website and YouTube channel. He's a regular presenter through PRSA Counselors Academy, PRSA Western District, various PRSA chapters. He serves on the board for the PRSA Tri-State District and was on the board for PRSA New Jersey from 2013 to 2022. Ken, it is incredible. You have an incredible resume.
I was like, do you want to take a breath?
I want to share with everyone. That was my tightened intro, and I think my intro needs some tightening. I think I have to hire Siarza to edit that thing down.
Sweet.
Because that took, that was like, I was bored, but I'm bored with me.
Have you ever considered
tighten that?
Becoming less awesome, and then we'd have fewer things to say? Did you? Yeah, that's also an option.
Up to you.
So Ken, I'll disclose. So I'm a big believer in professional development, not only for myself, but for the rest of the team. That is amazing on its own, even better with professional development. And I am so grateful for the work that you did for a key leader within our organization. But, the theme of the show is called Stories, Success, and Stuff. And so I always want to start off with a guest, like, how do you especially with the amount of team members that you've coached and leaders that you've coached, how have you defined success with them?
Yeah. So I just want to say one quick thing. As with all my coaching clients, I take pride in their achievement, but they get the credit. They do the work. So that leader on your team did the work. And I take pride in that. Okay. Of our progress. So what is success? For me, success is that I figured out, as odd as this sounds, get out of the PR agency business, which I had started in young, got into management young, leadership young, and create this new path and create this new career for myself. At a certain point in my life, I was meant to do agency work. And at another point, I was meant to do this. And it just feels so fulfilling and exciting. And I mean, and I tell people, I loved my PR career. I had some highlights. We won silver anvils and other awards and best of show. Great. We had impact on sales, right? Everything PR can do. But as fulfillment goes, it doesn't come close to this phase of my life. So in that sense, that I feel fulfilled every day, to me, that's success.
Mm-hmm. And I'm picking up, you said something specific. I created this path. So you had agency in what you were doing and the fulfillment you were going to be receiving. And that meant a change, sounds like, that you had to take a new direction.
Big change, big change. And we need to do that sometimes. If what you're doing isn't working, even if, and you know, I mean, I started young. I was kind of a Wunderkid, if I'm pronouncing it right, but I had great opportunity brought to me. And I worked for leaders who saw something in me, which is lovely. But at a certain point, it wasn't working. And I hit the point of realizing I could go back and hit my head against the wall and try it, or try to be open to it was time for something new. And it wasn't as hard a decision as you may think, though, of course, starting a business like this with no clients, looking back, what was I thinking? Was I insane? Maybe. I don't know.
Well, I want to go back to the start of the company, your company.
My company.
And I want to go back to the start of Jacobs Consulting and Executive Coaching. Yes. When did you know? One of the things I love about public relations agency owners is that we're a very whole different breed than the rest of the entrepreneur community. Mm-hmm. When did you know it was time for a career change? What was that breaking point for you?
Oh, easy. In full candor, because we tell the truth. We try to tell the truth always. I had this great career, and then each position was of shorter and shorter duration. And in full candor, brutally honest, it wasn't always by my choice. So at a certain point, I had to think about, why is this not working? I had so much success early on. What's not working now? And so faced with two things, could I figure out what wasn't working for me as not just an agency leader, but as a leader? And frankly, I was 50. And if you think there is an ageism in the world or in the agency business, there is. So finding a position at age 50 was going to be really hard. And I wasn't really sure what wasn't working. So in full tip of the hat, our mutual friend, George Rosenberg, we did a career reevaluation. What are you good at? What are you passionate about? What do you love? And what can you make, whatever a life of abundance means for you, money-wise. And George and his wife, Arlene, guided me to becoming a coach and consultant and trainer for the PR agency world. And I said, and encouraged me to present at Counselors Academy.
Huh.
But George, then I'll be a competitor of yours. And George said, there are enough people out there who need our help. I'm good with it. I'm fine. And I thought, that is a generosity of spirit that really wasn't in my DNA then.
Yeah.
So I think I sort of thought, gee, if I can become a coach, could I be that generous? So that was the moment. That was the moment.
How long from that moment to actually making the change? How long between there was that?
I mean, it was immediate. It was, I mean, I know I incorporated in October 2006, and and then, started looking for clients. So it was right there. I mean, it's not like I was working in an agency and then I was going to create this thing while I was working. I wasn't working. So I had plenty of time to figure it out, not well, needed money coming in, but I could spend full time creating it.
Sure.
Was there anything earlier on in your career that indicated to you that maybe the path was changing or it wasn't the best fit for you?
Yeah. I can only tell you, with hindsight, with the rear view mirror, I didn't know at the time. So we did a lot. We launched the one and only Wonder Bra, won all kinds of awards, yada, yada, yada. And it was always big and bold and outdoors and women coming out of helicopters and on billboards in Times Square. And I remember being in a taxi from the hotel to the event and my stomach was churning. And I said to myself, look, you led the strategy and the creative behind this event. You're good at what you do. So that's cool. You've got an amazing team of agents, client-facing people there, and they were amazing. We had a media department better than anyone in New York. So one side of me, we had Marina Marr, who we mentioned, who would come to the event, not questioning, she's like, what do you need me to do? How can I keep the clients out of your hair? Just tell me what you need. I will do it. How's that for a boss, huh? How's that for leadership?
Yeah.
So I had everything. Okay. So I had everything, but that churn was going on. I couldn't enjoy it. With hindsight, I realize it's because I needed to make a switch.
So
but I didn't know at the time, and it took a few years after that.
So in that moment when you're in the taxi cab, was it the fact where you said, I don't find this fun anymore? Or was it that imposter syndrome? It didn't sound like it.
I don't know that it was either, because my mind was saying, look, unless there's like an explosion at City Hall or God forbid something else, we're going to kill it with media. We're going to go national.
Yeah.
The branding will be there because we figured out how to integrate all that stuff. But my mind talk and my gut talk were like out of whack.
Gotcha.
I couldn't enjoy the moment.
The mind and the body.
In hindsight, I realized. So that was late 90s, early 2000s. So it took a few years and two careers later, to realize time for a change. And what have you got to lose? I had nothing to lose, really.
So fast forwards 2024, right? You remember those moments as a leader, as a director, as a partner in an agency. And it's 2024 now, you're coaching and you've been coaching for a significant amount of time.
Yeah.
I'm curious, the lessons that you learned then, or those feelings and emotions, or those shoes that you once wore, how often do they come back to you in your coaching now?
Constantly.
Yeah.
Any of us who work for Marina Marr talked about her expressions. We call them Marina-isms.
Oh, no. I'm afraid that might happen to me someday.
all of us agree. We think of them once a week. And we've had Marina on taking the lead. And I said, I don't know if you realize, we call them Marina-isms and they guide us. They're so strategic. And, one of my favorite, there were two that I remember. One is, hell is God giving you what you asked for. That was from her dad. But the one I use a lot is, you don't ask, you don't get. Don't ask, you don't get. And there are so many times I think, I got to ask or I'm not going to get. Thank you, Marina. So I think a lot of it is that. I think also I find it maybe ironic or delicious irony that I help leaders become much better leaders than I ever was. And I can reflect on my lack of leadership at times or mistakes in leadership and help them do better. So it's some like now I've talked to everybody, I almost everybody I've led, I'm still in touch with them. And they say, you're much too hard on yourself. You are not as bad as you may think. I'm like, well, thank you. And many of them have hired me, which is also delicious. But that said, in their future life, and now they've got like these amazing careers. But I think that I can take those lessons and build a life of abundance, helping people be better leaders. To me, that's very satisfying.
Leaders is a word that you're using often, and you write about it often. What is the difference between a leader, a manager, and a boss?
Yeah, huge, huge, huge. So I see the PR employee arc, especially agency. First, you're learning, then you're a practitioner, then like you're a really good practitioner, then you're a manager, and then at a certain point, you can become a leader. But that's a two-part choice. Your conscious decision to lead humans, to inspire them, to not just, and I'm not mitigating running an agency and growing business and everything else, but saying it is my destiny to lead people, to help them create success beyond what they even knew they were capable of. That's a big decision. It's a conscious decision. So that plays a role, but then your team members' conscious decision to follow you or not, because they don't have to follow you. They can come in, they can do the work, they can mark the checklist. It's a little transactional. But I think with leadership, we have the opportunity for it to be transformative. So again, your conscious decision to lead, their conscious decision to follow you. And you've got to earn that.
Yeah.
You've got to earn that. It's not that your name is on the door or you're in the org chart somewhere or you've got the fancy office. That's not leadership. Let me not forget your other question, the difference between a leader and a boss. I mean, I think when you're a leader, it is so much more powerful than being a boss. And I think boss is usually a designation for someone fairly near the top. I've known people throughout my career who were leaders when they were senior AEs. I know someone, when one of the firms where I worked, Ogilvy, was going through changes. They brought in new leadership, yada, yada, and it really felt like the ship was rudderless. Lenore Cooney is someone who would have people lined up outside her door for counsel and what should we do and how should I used to go and ask, and I didn't report to her. Ultimately, when she got the big promotion, I think it was to president, it was just such a natural thing for us because we were already following her.
Gotcha.
We were already following her. So that was a great example for me of it's not about the org chart. It's not about, the other thing is, and I tell this story a lot, poor Annie Heckenberger, who does social media out of Philadelphia. But she was at Marina Mars, she was a senior AE, but in the media department. And she had such great influence because she was so knowledgeable about media, about pop culture, and about other things that we would just go to her and we didn't think, hey, you're only a senior AE. So I always say my definition of leadership is if you use your leadership energy to get the desired outcomes for the organization, for the client, for your team, for your boss, for your peers, and yourself, if you're using that energy the right way, you're a leader. And so if you agree to that, then, or if you agree with that definition, then you realize we can have a lot of leaders in our agency or in any organization. And that's a good thing.
Yeah.
I think, there are people out there who we just know we can count on, who bring it and bring it and bring it. And I think if you've earned that reputation, then I think you appreciate that more in others.
I'm going to say, speaking of people, we're very big on those who have helped us. We both have mentors, or we've hired coaches, or we're really big on the team, which you can check out the squad episode if you haven't from season 1. But who helped you along the way?
Well, I've mentioned some of the people I've mentioned already. George and Arlene Rosenberg for helping me with that career reinvention. Lenore Cooney, who helped me just do my work and lead my teams during what could have been really difficult times. I worked for 2 women agency glass ceiling breakers. I wish there was a shorter term, but Jean Way Schoonover and Barbara Way Hunter. I didn't work for them in the late 60s. I was still in elementary school, I promise. But they took over an agency in the late 60s. I'm telling you, women, for the most part, did not run agencies in the late 60s.
No.
Trust me. Okay. It's funny, they took it over. They realized that a lot of the men who worked for them made a lot more money than they did, because that was acceptable those days. They corrected all the salaries.
That's a good idea.
Most of them, well, it was mostly them, right? Most of the male executives left, except one, Hal Kearse, who was one of my leaders and a hero. And, it's hard, when you've come so far. Here I am talking to, so many women agency owners, but it's hard to imagine that only 40 years ago, how rare that was. Then in around, I'm going to get the year wrong, but I think the mid 90s, Barbara then created her own firm, now called Hunter PR, now very big, now very prominent, successful, right?
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, in the mid 90s, if that's the year it was, women in their 60s did not just start agencies.
No.
It took such courage.
Wow, that's incredible. Yeah. I'm going through a little bit of a history lesson in public relations, especially in the APR. You kind of go through the folks in the 20s, which is when, the public relations position was created, especially in the times of war, et cetera. And then, 20 years later, and then 40 years later, you have agency growth, et cetera. This is all really fascinating. I am curious, Ken, out of the folks that you've coached so far, or some of the situations that you might have seen in your own personal success story, failure is a big topic in our podcast as well. You might have heard about how I failed, Jace has failed. People have had some really fascinating failure stories. Do you have any that you're willing to share that are like funny failures or failures of irony? With that irony was involved, either personal or some of the things that you've seen on your coaching, in the coaching, obviously not naming names, but like, I talked about this yesterday in a conversation about strategic planning. I talked about failing forward. Do you have any examples in the peripheral or within yourself about failing forward?
I think I'm gonna detour a little bit.
Sure.
In coaching, when failure comes up, I try to plant a seed. I try not to talk much, because the essence of coaching is asking open-ended, empowering questions. That's what lights up the coaching client's brain. But when failure comes up, I try to plant the seed, the notion, and I know I've used this quote, there are no failures, only learnings, or there are no failures, only experiments. And I've really come to believe that. And if you don't want to take my word for it, the list of people, amazing leaders in all walks of life, who agree with that thinking include, are you ready? Edison, Einstein, the Beatles, the original Mr. Honda, Ella Fitzgerald, Oprah, and Dolly Parton. They all agree that failure leads to success, and it's not something to be worried about. Not only is celebrated, but shared.
Doing it publicly. Yeah, this notion that anyone can get through without having some failures along the way is so destructive.
the most success, and I think Bill Gates might be in that group as well.
I believe it.
But a lot of people, they just know failures along the way. So one thing I try to do in discussing failures, I always try to put it in air quotes because that just says to us, I think it minimizes the power of how we usually think about failure. But I think if you look up failure in leadership, you will see so many examples of leaders, again, all walks of life, who not only failed, but value their failure and celebrate it. Celebrate it.
Well, Ken, we're going to start wrapping up here really, really quickly.
Didn't we just start? Didn't
I
we just
know.
It goes so
What?
fast.
I mean, okay, so here's a more personal question.
Uh-oh.
And it's a good way to kind of talk about this because I'm a big believer in life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The Pursuit of Happiness is one of my favorite movies. At the end of the day, how will you know, you, Mr. Ken Jacobs, how will you know you lived a good life?
Yeah. This is going to sound odd. I'm already feeling that
It's not odd at all.
because I've spent a good 17 years, give or take, helping people become inspiring leaders, to become inspired and inspiring leaders, to manage and walk through their fear, to ask for what they want, to give feedback, constructive feedback that needs to be given. So that I chose that life and I get to do that makes me feel great about those choices. And I like to think one of the things IPEC is where I did my coaching training and some of my certification, Institute for Professional Excellence in Coaching. And what gets us going is we are trying to make the world a better place, one coaching client at a time.
It's powerful. Ken,
So
that's
what it
powerful.
is for me. That's what it is for me.
Ladies and gentlemen, Ken Jacobs.
I was going to
Where's
drum
the
roll.
music?
I was going to drum roll, but
I-
Justin would kill me.
There's-
Yeah.
Enough.
We're so thankful, Ken. I hear that you might actually have a complimentary session for some folks. Can you talk about that really briefly?
I do. I believe that if I'm given an opportunity to give a leadership symposium or a webinar or speak or appear on a podcast, if anyone's listening and you'd like to become a better leader, I'm happy to offer a complimentary session, 45 minutes. If you're not leading the way you want, if you've got things getting in the way, if you want to go from good leader to great, to consistently great, if you're having a challenge at work, leading someone, if you're having a challenge speaking to your, whatever it may be, I'm happy to offer a 45-minute complimentary session. And I always say you may be surprised at what we can achieve in 45 minutes.
Absolutely. And take him up on that. Truly.
100%.
And we'll
Why
put
wouldn't you?
Why wouldn't
Why
you?
wouldn't you?
You guys are here obviously to learn. You're wanting to get things, but we'll put the info for that in the description.
Thank you.
And I have a surprise for you, Ken. I got to break it to you. You are that generous, gracious leader you talked about having been an inspiration to you, and you thought, will I ever be that generous and gracious? What an offer. So you're there.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. And if people want to get in touch with you, they can find you on LinkedIn. Just search for Ken Jacobs PCP. They can contact you via email, ken@jacobscom.com, or your website, jacobscom.com. And most importantly, you are a gem. And thank you. Thank you so much. And your stories of success, failures, and leadership in general, I hope inspire those that listen to failure, air quotes.
Failure. Thank you.
Ken, anything else that you wanted to add to today's conversation?
Yes, I am just so honored and grateful to be the first outside guest on the podcast. It's just crazy, and I appreciate it. And I had a blast. And thank you to you both.
We have this ongoing joke that our moms.
That's your joke.
My joke that our moms are listening plus more now. And so now it's even more humbling to know that you're also listening and what you were asking. Hey, I want to be on the show, and thank you for your enthusiasm. Thank you for your support. Thank you for telling everybody about how great our podcast is. Thanks again to everybody for listening to our episode of Stories, Success, and Stuff. We can't wait for you to see the rest of season 2. Thanks for joining us. This is Jace. I'm Kristelle. Thanks again.